I'm here at the University of Sheffield Students' Union, and I'm here with Natalie Bennett, the Green Party candidate for Sheffield Central. Hello, how are you doing today?
Very good, thank you very much. Enjoying this glorious weather.
Yes, it's really nice today. I'm going to start off with sort of talking about students and students in terms of money at university. Mm-hmm. So lots of students are in their overdrafts. They rely on the bank of mum and dad, and they also some of them have part-time jobs. So what will the Green Party do for students in terms of finance whilst they're at university?
Right, well, the policy that I think most people already know about is the Green Party would have zero university tuition fees and would pay back those who still have outstanding student loans. Beyond that, we would also restore education maintenance allowances, and we would restore grants for students. So basically at the moment, I mean, as you said, lots of people are relying on the bank of mum and dad, but lots of people don't have a bank of mum and dad. And, if you're doing part-time jobs, that obviously interferes both potentially with your studies, but also with all those extracurricular activities, which these days are so important to building up the CV, securing a job when you're finished. So there's a profound inequity there. But it's also, it doesn't add up the current situation. On the government's own figures, 50p in the pound will never be paid back of those student loans, and 72% of people will never pay those loans back. So it really is a fictional system, a system built on air, not facts, because they're not loans, because most of them will never be paid back. Okay,
so in terms of maintenance loans, mm-hmm. What do you think what can change with maintenance loans? Because at the moment, there are some people who believe that their parents, because of the parents' income, they're not receiving enough money, even though the parents might not necessarily give them the money to help them out. They might decide to go on holiday themselves, so the child might not necessarily have enough money. Likewise, some parents might have more children to look after. Do you believe there should be some sort of like universal maintenance loan or something similar to sort of work with?
Well, of course, what Green Party policy is in the longer term is something called universal basic income, also known as citizens' income. And that would mean that if you exist, you get universal basic income, citizens' income. It would replace child benefit, be considerably higher than child benefit for under 18s. But then as soon as you turned 18, you would have your own universal basic income coming in. So that would really ensure that nobody gets left with no money at all. Everyone has that kind of basic income. And that has, as well as for students, giving people the chance to study and keep studying for as long as it works for them and as it makes sense for them. It also means that perhaps when you finish studying, if you're a musician, maybe you're an artist, creative person, you can pursue your art and craft, rely on that. Or alternatively, if you wanted to perhaps start your own small business, you can do that without the kind of insecurity and worry that people find it really hard now once you've left university. I was talking to someone the other day who said, I have to get a job the Monday after I finish university. My debts are so large, my parents can't help me, I have to get a job that day. And that really, again, puts people in that situation at a disadvantage compared to those who've got a bank of mum and dad who can spend some time looking for the right job, not just any job.
Okay, and so a lot of students believe they're not going to be able to afford a house anytime like after they graduate. So what will the Green Party be like doing and promoting that can help students get housing after they graduate?
Okay, I think there's sort of three areas of housing to address. First of all, there's the basic philosophical problem. We've come to regard housing primarily as a financial asset, not as homes being secure, affordable places for people to live. One side of that is council housing. Now, right to buy has been one of the great privatisations of the recent decades. And the Green Party, we would stop that privatisation, end the loss of the council stock and social housing stock that we've still got, but also build 500,000 homes over the course of, or get up to 100,000 homes a year, 500,000 homes in total over the course of the next parliament. Because we need those homes. And the thing is, they can actually pay back for themselves through council rents. But the other side of this is for a considerable, very long period of time, we're going to see a lot of people in private housing. And at the moment, private landlords have been allowed to really run riot. And I see the houses in Sheffield. I talk to people who live in private housing in Sheffield, some of which is in dreadful condition, and people are paying really extortionate rents. So what we'd like to do is go towards the Scottish model, where all landlords have to be licensed, it's checked that they're fit and proper people to be a landlord, have really high standards in terms of insulation, have really high standards in terms of ensuring that if things get broken, they get fixed. And also, what we need is a living rent. Probably everyone's heard of the living wage, although I have to stress that what is called the living wage by the government now is George Osborne's fake living wage, not the real living wage. The living wage is calculated by the Living Wage Foundation each year. We want to take that model and have a living rent commission. And sort of general ballpark figure is that rent shouldn't consume more than 30% of your income. We want to work towards that living rent for everybody.
Okay, and so in the wake of Brexit, going to bring up the topic of Brexit now, and there's uncertainty with international students regarding whether they can stay or leave, how many students can come from international countries. What will the Greens do in terms of promoting Brexit negotiations that can help international students? What are they sort of suggesting?
Well, I think to start off looking at those international students, what we need to say is they are people, as are the academics who are in similar situations here at the universities in Sheffield, as are doctors and nurses and other professionals at our hospitals. They are people. They are not and should not be treated as bargaining chips, in that infamous phrase. So we need to give absolute security, a guarantee now that they've made their lives here, they can stay here under the same terms as before. But more broadly than that, in terms of Brexit, the Green Party, we celebrate free movement of people in the EU. It enriches all of our lives. We're going to fight tooth and nail to keep it. That's one of the things that really in this election differentiates us from Labour, is the fact that Labour, I'm afraid their manifesto says free movement has ended. Will end with Brexit. We don't accept that. And the other thing is also, I've just been at Tapton School talking to pupils there, and some of them were very angry that at 16 and 17 they didn't get the right to vote in the referendum. Green Party believes all 16 and 17-year-olds should have the vote. But beyond that, everyone who voted, and the 75% of under 25s who voted to remain, no one knew what the final destination was going to be. So the Green Party, we're calling for a ratification referendum. So that would be when the talks are finished, we can see where we're going. People should have the choice to say, no, that's not a destination we wanted to go to. We want to go back. We want to remain as part of the EU. So what we could see for the EU students is keeping free movement, staying as part of the EU, but more broadly also thinking about non-EU international students. We have a government that clearly doesn't respect the huge contribution, both financial and cultural, they're making to our universities, to our cities like Sheffield. There's so many things to say about this, but let's say, the immigration cap is an absolute nonsense. Students shouldn't be in the immigration cap, but we should not have an immigration cap. It's a wholly artificial figure. It's a net figure, so of course the government has no control over how many people who leave. Well, sometimes it does seem like they're trying to force a lot of people out, but the immigration cap is a nonsense figure. We should have a fair, just, humane immigration system, which means people who should have the right to be able to be here should be able to be here.
Okay, lovely. And in terms of now moving to the NHS, with cuts to the NHS and difficulties for students to see their GPs whilst at university, how can the Green Party promise the NHS to be completely free at the point of access? Because that was in the manifesto. Very
much so, and that means restoring some of the services that were there at the beginning have now been taken away, including dental and ophthalmology. And the way we do that is, first of all, by 2020, putting £25 billion into the NHS. Now, that doesn't mean we're getting a luxury NHS. What it means is our health spending matches the OECD average. It's a basic, decent standard. So there's money, but there's also the really important principle of ensuring that money isn't going off into private profits. So we back the NHS reinstatement bill, which would actually would say there shall be no private sector for-profit companies involved in running our NHS, and that actually restores the duty of the Secretary of State to provide health care, and that removes the purchaser-provider split, which costs the NHS somewhere between 4.5 and £10 billion a year. That's money going in administration and bureaucracy caused by privatisation and preparing for privatisation. Take that out, that money is available for healthcare, and that makes a big difference. And just one final thing, which isn't money, but it's just a question of attitude, an attitude that's sorely lacking from our Tory government, which is, let's respect the health professionals who are absolutely, essential to the NHS. I spent a lot of time on the picket lines with junior doctors. I spent time marching with student nurses who've lost their bursaries. And they feel and are being disrespected, not listened to, abused even by Jeremy Hunt, the Health Secretary. And that is, I've described it as playing with fire, because they all know someone who's gone to Canada, gone to Australia, they have the option of moving. There's a global shortage of healthcare professionals. And driving them away really is the height of what are the Tories trying to do? Jeremy Hunt is on the record of saying that was the co-editor of a book that said he wants an American-style healthcare system. You've got to ask if that isn't what the Tories are trying to do.
Okay, and now in terms of now moving to nuclear deterrent, the cost of cancelling Trident, the Green Party has estimated it will save £100 billion over 30 years. Will this cost saving affect the defence of the UK?
Well, what cancelling Trident would do is make us safer. That's starting point one. But more than that, it would mean that Britain could have a massive positive impact on the world. There's now 113 countries have signed up to a call for a global ban on nuclear weapons. That's the majority of countries in the world working together to say we want to get rid of these hideous weapons of mass destruction that threaten all of our safety and security. Now, even people who are proponents of Trident and other nuclear weapons say, but they can never be used. But while they're there, they're a threat. They're a clear and present danger to all of us. And if Britain stepped in and said, we're going to become the 114th country to work for a global ban, the time now is really very much ripe. If you look at, before he was elected, I was expressing concerns about Donald Trump being in control of nuclear weapons. I think those are concerns that must be shared around the world, including with the Chinese and the Russians. And nobody really wants to be spending the kind of money that they've got to be spending now when climate change is so pressing, when there's so many economic problems in the world. So now is really a time when Britain could have a massive positive impact on the world by getting rid of Trident nuclear weapons. And of course, as you point out, save quite a bit of money you could use for useful purposes along the way.
Okay, sticking along this sort of similar lines of environmental issues. So the Green Party have pushed a lot for environmental policies in the manifesto. Why do you think that these environmental policies are important for the UK?
Well, I'd go beyond important. I mean, these are crucial. I was asked actually at the hustings here at the university, what's the single most important policy in our manifesto? And I had to say, if you're asking what's important particularly to students, who, most of whom are perhaps in their early 20s on average, you'd be hoping to live maybe 60 years. If we don't tackle climate change and all the much broader environmental degradation, the way we've turned our oceans into a plastic soup, the way we've trashed our soils, the fact that we've lost half of the world's wild animals in the last 40 years, if we don't act on all of those things, then this is a pretty horrible, miserable world to live in very, very quickly. And, if you go past, it's still, there is a target, it's still just achievable 1.5 degree warming above pre-industrial levels. That's bad. If you get up to 2, then you're in very, very dangerous territory. And we have to do that. Ultimately, none of this is actually politics. It's physics.
Okay. So sort of on the similar lines, the Green Party have stated they want free transport for young people. Obviously, free transport itself can be an help the environment a lot. How will the Green Party fund this when the NHS is being cut and the social care is being cut in terms of in the current economic climate? How will the Green Party address this?
Well, I think looking at all of these things, we've got a government who's saying there's no money. We've got a government that is also slashing corporation tax down to global lows. What we have is a society where big multinational companies like, for example, Amazon, are taking massive profits out of Britain and not paying back in taxes. The road outside the studio we're sitting in now, there will have been lorries, vans carrying Amazon parcels running up and down that today. We're all paying to maintain that road. Amazon isn't. So for the hospitals, for the transport, for all the other things, what we need to do is see the people who are benefiting from our society paying back into it, paying into the infrastructure. So that means, corporation tax, which is the tax paid by big companies. There used to be traditionally, there was a 10 percentage point gap between what big companies paid and small company tax. That was actually reduced by the Blair government, abolished by the coalition. We want to restore the gap between corporation tax and small company tax. That will help small companies compete against the big companies, which means we keep more money, more jobs, more opportunities in Sheffield and all the other local economies around the world. And we also have money from corporate tax, from corporation tax. We have money also from taxing richer individuals who aren't paying their way now. We're talking really about a rebalancing of our society. And we're not talking about, anything that's historically abnormal. What we're doing is heading back towards historic norms that we've raced away from in particularly, the last couple of decades, particularly the last few years.
Okay, and the final question. When most students that go to university, they expect to get a job out of it. Many are worried that they're not going to get many future job prospects. They believe there are not going to be many, as there's loads of degrees being handed out, there's not going to be as many jobs. How will the Green Party ensure that students that go to university get good grades and then they can get a good job?
Well, I think I started to talk a little bit about the structure of the economy. And what we've seen is these big multinational companies dominating our economy. They have a lot of low-paid workers, often 0 hours contract, minimum wage or near minimum wage. And they have a head office possibly in London or possibly even further afield than that. What we need to do is build strong local economies where money goes round and round in local economies. And to sort of make that really concrete, think about an example. If you've got a local greengrocer still, if you're lucky enough to have such a thing, that local greengrocer, when she needs a new sign, she'll employ a signwriter. When she needs some new shelves, a carpenter. She'll use probably a local accountant to do her books. A local lawyer, when she needs to sort her lease out. You can see how you have that local economy, a rich ecology of small independent businesses, lots of different opportunities. We need to bring much more manufacturing, making things back to Britain, much more food production back to Britain, and that's an issue of food security as well as jobs. But there's huge opportunities from a different kind of a relocalised economy, one that's built around small independent businesses where local economies thrive and do much more for themselves. Now, I'm not talking about autarky or, I don't think we're probably not going to be making, sort of particular, medical imaging machinery of a particular type. If there's one place in the world that Germany already does it, we're not necessarily going to do one here and one in everywhere in the country, everywhere in the world. But we're going to have, much of the things we need, the tables we sit at, the chairs we sit on, clothes we're wearing, made much more locally.
Brilliant. So this has been Natalie Bennett at the University of Sheffield Students' Union. She's running as the Green Party candidate for Sheffield Central. Thank you very much for coming and speaking to us.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it. Cheers.
No problem.